A podcast not seen since the age of legends. This is the One Power Podcast. Welcome back, everyone. Episode 6 coming at you today. I am Greg.
And I'm Thorn.
And we are back to business as usual. If you tuned in last week, we had special guest Daniel Green. If you did not listen to that episode, what are you doing? Press pause right now and go back to episode 5 and listen to that, unless you haven't read the books. All of the books, in which case, ignore everything I just said, because it's the first spoiler-filled episode beyond where we're covering in the books. That's why I mentioned that we're back to our normal mode of operation, getting back into Eye of the World tonight. But it is a holiday week. Thorn, do you have any time off from work this week?
Yeah, I'll have Thursday off. Unfortunately, have to work Friday because I let somebody else take Friday off.
So part of me wants to say how generous of you. The other part of me wants to say, why would you do such a thing? But in any case,
because I'm nice.
A green Aja being nice. We'll see.
No, it's the Reds. Green Ajas are always nice. It's the Reds that are always mean.
Are they always nice though, Thorn? Are they always nice?
Well, just don't make me mad.
Again, are they always nice? We don't. Anyway, I myself also have, of course, the 4th of July off. So for our American listeners, happy Independence Day, because you will hear this on July the 5th. We are recording on July the 2nd, Tuesday night currently. But you will hear this on the 5th, so happy Independence Day to all our American listeners. And for the rest of you go ahead.
Sorry, I would like to also mention yesterday, because we're recording this on the 2nd, yesterday was Canada Day. So happy birthday, Canada.
Happy birthday, you Canadians. We like you a little bit, I guess. I like you. Anyway, with that being said, we are back to, as I stated earlier, our normal mode of operation tonight. We are going to be covering chapters 6 and 7 of Eye of the World. But Thorn has a special announcement, something new we are excited to announce. Thorn, what are we announcing?
So we are officially launching our Patreon page.
You can give us money.
Yes, you can give us money. Right now, we only have one tier. It will be, what did I name it?
What did you name it? For complete and total transparency, I have not looked at the Patreon. I have not looked into the Patreon. I've been so busy with other life things that I have just let Thorn drive when it comes to the Patreon. But she knows more about that than I do, which is why she's kind of driving the announcement right now. So anyway.
I believe that I called the patrons channelers for now. We may change it. We may not. We'll see how it goes. But right now, we've only got one tier. It's a $1 tier. Right now, our goal is to get to where we're making, I think I put $50 a month, basically just to cover our expenses, because recording a podcast doesn't pay for itself. Greg is paying for Zencaster and Podbean. We bought music.
So basically, what Thorn is saying is she does all the planning and everything for the episodes, and I pay the bills.
Pretty much. But with your help, you guys can pay the bills.
So please, come pay our bills. Please. But in all seriousness, if you guys like what we do here, I know we're only on episode 6, but Patreon is typically the best way to finance this type of creative content.
I should also add that you don't give us money for nothing.
No.
You will get things like bloopers, and so far all I've got is bloopers. But
it is a work in progress.
Later.
And we will be right, and we will continually be working to improve that. We just want to go ahead and get it launched and get it out there so you guys are aware, and you guys can be weighing whether or not you want to become patrons. We would be so thankful if you would. Even if it's just $1 a month, that's fine. But if you definitely want to support what we do here, then we encourage you to go to the Patreon, which we will discuss a little bit later toward the end of the episode, how you can do that. But needless to say, we're not like everybody. we're like everybody else. None of us are begging for money. If you want us to keep doing this and you want to help us with the expenses, and you really want us to keep creating content, and you like the content that we create, then you definitely want to go over to Patreon and take a look around. And we will be adding more things here in the near future as soon as Thorn and mine lives can actually slow down a little bit so we can actually think about it and discuss it a little more. But we will definitely be adding more tiers. And as we add things, watch our Twitter and listen to the show and even the Facebook if you still, for some reason, do Facebook. And you'll get all the news that way. So anytime we make an improvement or an addition, we will let you guys know for sure. But moving right along into the content for the episode tonight, as I stated just a second ago, we're going to be covering chapters 6 and 7 of Eye of the World. We're back to our chapter by chapter. I want to say walkthrough, but it's really more of just kind of our commentary on these chapters. If you have not read through Eye of the World, chapter 7, the end of chapter 7, so if you have not, basically, if you're not on chapter 8 or later in Eye of the World in the story, stop listening. Go listen to the earlier podcasts, with the exception of episode 5. If you listen to episode 5, you'll hate us forever, but we warned you. But yeah, so let's get into it. So we rolled the dice last time in episode 4. That's how we decide who's going to get what chapter. And I think I won, so I picked chapter 7. So Thorn's up first with chapter 6. So Thorn, what do we got?
Okay, so chapter 6 is the Westwood. We open up with Rand tending to his father's wounds. Tam's wounds seem superficial, but he's running an insane fever. Like it looks like just a scratch, and Rand cannot find any other wounds on his father's body at all, but he is running a ridiculous fever. Rand is worried that the fever will kill Tam or cause him harm. As he sets a wet cloth on his father's forehead and starts to bandage the wound, his mind wanders to Trollocs and Fades being real, and he freezes. He finishes tending Tam's wounds and wonders what he should do about Tam's murmurings. When Rand asks him to be quiet, Tam says, "You're still lovely, Kari. Still lovely as a girl," referring to Rand's mother. Since Kari had been dead for 15 years, Rand figures that the fever is worse than he originally thought. Rand gets upset thinking of his mother, despite having few memories of her in the... Oh, I don't know what I'm reading here. I can't read my own notes. I make my own notes and I can't read them. Despite having few memories of her past her being gentle. So she was a gentle woman, but that's all that Rand can remember because he was very young when she died. From what I can remember correctly, he was about 5-ish when she died. Rand tells him that Kari wants him to be quiet and gives him water. Tam continues to murmur, but he's very quiet now. Rand creates a makeshift litter from the shafts he cut from the cart. As he lifts his father onto the litter, he thinks of how indestructible his father always seemed, and that disheartens Rand a bit. But he knew that he had to keep on regardless. Rand takes the sword belt from Tam's waist and puts it on himself. I am having trouble reading today.
Phonics with Thorn.
Sound out the words and read the words one at a time.
That does not work with Wheel of Time. I'm sorry. It will not work with the names, especially. It will not work. Anyway.
He then begins pulling Tam along on the litter. He makes the decision to travel in the woods, but along the road. Despite not wanting to be seen, he doesn't want to get lost either. It's noted that Rand is absolutely exhausted, having woke with the sun that morning and not having much to eat aside from Mistress Alvear's honey cakes. He berates himself for not grabbing any food when he went back to the farm, but he uses this thought to push himself, sure that Mistress Alvear would insist on feeding him as soon as he got to the inn. So Mistress Alvear is a very motherly woman, and as soon as she saw him, he knew that he would get fed. Tam starts talking again. He speaks of someone/thing coming over the dragon wall and about people dying for Laman's sin. As Rand tries to quiet him, Tam grabs him by his collar and babbles about a battle against savages that was supposed to be easy but was far from it. He also speaks of the topless towers of Kyrian burning and sorry, that came out awkward. The topless towers of Kyrian burning and the enemy making it all the way to the shining walls before they were turned back. Rand clamps a hand over Tam's mouth just in time as the Black Cloak rider comes by on the road, followed by a group of Trollocs. Rand stays totally still as they pass and waits a bit longer. Just as he's going to straighten, the Black Cloaked rider comes walking back down the road, stopping every few steps to look into the forest. The horseman appears to look right at him but continues on. When the rider nearly disappeared from view, suddenly the horse comes galloping back towards the farm. Feeling panicky, Rand gathers himself back to continue pulling the litter. As he pushes himself forward, Rand thinks of Edmund's Field and the safety he would find there. Tam starts up again, speaking of Avendasaurus. Avendasora. I don't know why I think it's a dinosaur.
A Vendosaur.
The Avendasaurus.
I'm just picturing a big, like, leafy stegosaurus. It's the Avendosaur. Anyway, we're lame. Go ahead.
Okay. So Tam starts up again, speaking of Avendasora and a cutting of it, a sapling being given to Kyrian's king as a gift. The people who gave the Avendasora sapling to Kyrian apparently never make peace, but they did with Kyrian, and the tree grew for 500 years. Apparently, Laman cut it down, and that's why they were attacked. Rand notes that Avendasaurus is also known as the Tree of Life, but that the stories never mention a they, and that the Tree of Life belonged to the Green Man. Rand muses that since he's seen Trollocs, that the other creatures from stories may be real as well. Suddenly, Tam starts talking about a battle he was in. Wanting to get away from the smell and the sight of the dead, he wandered up the slope of a mountain where he heard a baby cries. He talks about they and how their women fight alongside the men, but he's still shocked that they let a pregnant woman come to the battle. The woman gave birth on the mountainside, and before dying of her wounds, she covered the child in her cloak. But the wind had blown the cloak away, and the baby was crying in the snow, blue with the cold and dying. No children of our own. Always knew you wanted children. I knew you'd take it to your heart, Kari. Yes, lass. Rand is a good name. A good name. Rand is shocked by this revelation and falls to his knees. In denial, he thinks that his father must be having fever dreams. You are my father, he says before checking Tam, whose fever has gotten much worse. He moves on, wondering in his head, Light, who am I? So, pretty big revelation at the end of this chapter. Rand is not biologically Tam's son. He was adopted by Tam and Kari Althor after he was found with his mother dead on the side of a mountain.
And the thing that sticks out to me about that revelation specifically is the fact that it's not like, Star Wars, Luke, I am your father. It's not direct. It's Tam has never said these words to Rand in his right mind. He has never had that conversation. He's never even alluded to the fact that he's anything but Tam's son. But then in a pitched fever dream, so to speak, he's saying all this stuff. And that's why I think, I think that's why one of the reasons, many reasons, of course, but one of the reasons why Rand wasn't able really to stomach that at that time. Of course, he was trying to focus on getting his, hurt and potentially dying father back to health. But at the same time, it's in the midst of all this other stuff. They say when it rains, it pours. So in the midst of all this other stuff, on top of that, he's hearing his dad mutter about how Rand is essentially not his biological son. And I mean, the Althors are just getting it from all directions.
I kind of get why he never told Rand, because He found him as a newborn baby, and he raised him as his son from a newborn baby. And from the sounds of it, he and Kari had tried to have children, but were unable to. Uh, so whenever he found this baby with no parents and dying on the side of the mountain, his first thought was, well, we've always wanted to have children. And so at that moment in Tam's head was, this is going to be our baby, because he knew that Kari would take to Rand immediately.
And I think, you know, there's so many stories out there where the hero or somebody, some character that's a main character, a permanent fixture, or a large fixture in the story, finds out something different about his lineage. Something, he didn't come from a farmer, he came from whatever else. And of course there's several different stories where you can point to that. I just made a Star Wars reference. Star Wars is a space fantasy, so it kind of counts. But Luke Skywalker finding out that he's the son of a Jedi, he finds that out actually in the first movie, and it was just casually mentioned. It wasn't even a big deal. The big deal was finding out that he was actually the son of this huge villain. But in this particular case, though, I feel like it's a little more unique because, and I'm sure somebody out there in Twitter of Time can correct me, or maybe Thorne, of something, but I'm trying to think right now of other instances in different stories I've encountered and read where someone found out that they were not exactly who they thought they were because their parent or guardian or whoever was either rambling in their sleep, or they had some type of fever that was causing them to, say these different things and just blurt out what they were seeing in their mind and stuff like that. To me, this is kind of a unique way to reveal it, because he's revealing it in the midst of all this stuff going on, the Trolloc attack, Rand desperately trying to get Tam all the way back to Emmons Field so he can, get seen to by Nynaeve and live. And then in the midst of all that, where really Rand should not be focused on anything his dad is saying because he's got a fever and he's probably talking nonsense, he starts hearing all that and he just hones in on it. But the interesting thing to me was that he still, in his heart, he's still denying it. He's like, no, there's no way it's possible. There's no way.
He doesn't think that it's impossible, but he loves his dad and he wants his dad to be his real dad. Which, in my opinion, if somebody raises somebody else and loves them like that, that they are the real father. It's like my husband's biological dad was never around, and he was his stepdad. I don't like saying stepdad, even though he is technically my husband's stepdad. Came into his life when he was about 8, but my father-in-law treats my husband like his son.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't treat him like this outsider child.
Right.
And to me, especially with step parents, a lot of the time, the ones who actually take their children, take their stepchildren into their hearts, that they can be just as good or even better than biological parents.
And I could agree with that. And I think another thing that actually makes this situation more, I should say heavier, is not more heavier, just the word heavier. I know English. Is the fact that, so you use the analogy of a stepfather, but the thing about Tam and Rand is that Tam and Rand and Kari, they're not related by blood. As in, Rand is absolutely positively, biologically speaking, not their son at all. So that makes the bond right. Well, and that's what I'm saying. That would, I don't even know, is adoption really like an established thing in the Wheel of Time, other than this instance? I mean, do they talk about, anyone picking up, just like, hey, there's an orphan off the street. Let's take him home. I mean, like.
There is a mention, which I'm not going to say exactly what it was. Lan talking to Rand and Shinar, saying that if a Shinaran man takes raises another child, that it's considered their real parent. So that's in a way adoption. And also, there's another group of people which have not been introduced yet. Well, Shinarans haven't either, but
Can't walk it back now, Thorn. Can't walk it back now.
Okay, there's a certain race of people who have warrior women, and oftentimes these warrior women who will get pregnant, but they will not want to stop being warriors, and oftentimes their children will be adopted out.
So, at the risk of saying more spoilers, there are some other instances of what we would consider adoption later in the books.
Yeah,
but
so
in
at minimum 2.
Right. But in Rand's particular case, though, Tam, I don't even know if Tam told anyone in the Two Rivers.
I think that the only person that might know would be the Wisdom, since medicine stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you have family members, like if my mother has high blood pressure, then me as her biological daughter, I am more likely to have high blood pressure.
Right.
So things like that. So the Wisdom might know. But we don't know for sure at this point.
Well, in any case, as of this moment, we know for sure that the only person in the world that knows the truth if Rand is really Tam's biological son or not is Tam Althor. And Tam Althor is a rambling maniac in a fever dream. So that still causes doubt or casts doubt on the fact that he's saying these things, which allows Rand to doubt. But really and truthfully, this is a reveal for sure. And it will get heavier and more, I guess, cemented later on. And that's not really a spoiler because we've already talked about what's being cemented right now. So, but it was interesting to me. I think I like the way Jordan did this simply because it was better to me than it being like, Tam is like dying in a bed on his actual deathbed, and he's like, son, come closer. I must tell you a secret of your past.
He kind of is on his deathbed. He's dying.
Yeah, but the thing is though, he's not in his right mind. He's not telling Rand in this moment. He's not actually talking to Rand. He's not saying, Rand, I need to tell you something. I found you on the side of a mountain. You're not my son, or you're not my biological son. You're my son, but you're not my biological son. He's not doing that. He's rambling, and this is stuff swimming through his head that he is speaking out because of his fever, because his inhibitions are lowered.
In his head, he is in that battle and in that moment.
Right. But that's what I'm saying is I find this more interesting than if, Tam dying on his deathbed, calls Rand over to his bedside and makes it a point to reveal this to him. Because to me, I'll just be real. It's a little more dramatic. It's a little more interesting. It's more intriguing because there's still an element of doubt in it where it's like, well, he's just rambling, but I don't know. That sounded pretty coherent to be just a random stuff he's spitting out. Like, I feel like he's actually stating a memory. It's like you said, like he's at that battle. And we know from earlier chapters that Tam did leave the Two Rivers for some time. So we have not really went through or found out exactly what Tam got into while he was gone. I mean, we
yeah. If we go to the fever dream points, we know that he was in a war. We know, I think it's already been mentioned that Rand's mother was an Outlander.
Yes, that was mentioned because of his hair.
Yes, because he has red hair. Yes, that's right. Red hair and light eyes.
So we have some precedent to go off of. So that's what also makes this point and this method of finding this truth out. It doesn't make it too, um, I guess, too crazy. As in, it's like, oh, that's just some real random way that doesn't fit. No, it kind of fits because we've been getting little glimpses of, you know, the Althors are definitely a Two Rivers family, but they're different than any other Two Rivers family. I mean, they farm in the Westwood, which is the most difficult place to farm. Tam married an Outlander, Kari, who had, similar hair and eyes to Rand. Rand is taller than a lot of the men and the guys around Emmons Field. So there's stuff stacking up saying the Althors, there's something different about the Althors, especially Rand. And Tam knows something. He's just not saying it. And to me, Tam always struck me as that kind of person that I know a lot more than I'm letting on. Like that's because he always was very, and you can tell from his mannerisms, Tam was always very much a man that considered things before he spoke. But he always struck me not as someone who was holding a secret necessarily, but as someone who, like I said, they knew more than they spoke. You've got examples of two different types of people there throughout.
They're kind of worldly.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, especially, and then and the sword, the Heron Mark blade. Like, where did you get that? And then he alludes to it by saying, Tam tells Rand, he's like, I paid too much for it. I paid way too much for it. And it's like, well, what price did he pay? Did he pay with money?
Yeah,
Or,
it never says that he paid money for it.
It just says the cost was too high.
He does say that he didn't think that the sword was worth 2 coppers, but he does not say how much he paid for it or what he paid for it.
In other words, what he did to come into possession of the sword. So this moment here really brings all of that back, because then you start putting things together like, well, wait a minute, who was Kari? Really, who was Rand? Where did he get the sword? Where did he? What did he fight? Where did he go? What did he do? And so there's more mystery coming out. So we had the mystery. Tam is just adding to the mystery that's growing from the Trolloc attack to even the strangers, Moraine and Lan, arriving in town. There's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of things coming out. So, I mean, I still feel like, I don't think Rand, of course, Rand doesn't immediately accept this truth about his father, but, as we progress, everyone will see that even though he doesn't like it, he comes to, I guess, accept it. But anyway, so with that being said, Thorny, got anything else on chapter 6 you'd like to point out?
I think that's all. I think the biggest thing that happened was that revelation.
Yeah, and it was kind of a transition chapter. I mean, it wasn't boring by any means, and it really wasn't that long of a chapter for a Wheel of Time chapter. But that was really the point. So moving into chapter 7, Out of the Woods, this is their arrival in Emmons Field. Now, just kind of going to go ahead and state this, because the things I'm about to go through kind of only makes sense if you know this. But in this chapter, it's discovered, and if you haven't read this, why are you listening to this episode? But it is discovered that Moraine is an Aes Sedai, and she has helped defend the town from a Trolloc attack. And when they arrive in Emmons Field, they see the evidence of that Trolloc attack. So when they get there, it's morning. The sun's starting to rise. Morning is coming on as they approach. First, he's happy about it. Rand's like, oh yeah, sweet, we're at Emmons Field, awesome. But then he starts to notice smoke, and really by the time he gets into the village, he sees that about half of it has been burned. So he runs into Master Luhan, who helps rush. He rushes up to Rand as he comes from the woods and helps him to carry Tam to Nynaeve, of course, for Tam's fever to be seen to. Egwene, who is running around trying to help others, leads Rand and Master Luhan to Nynaeve. Now, Master Luhan speaks a little bit about what happened that night. We know what happened to Tam and Rand, but he's kind of filling everyone in on what happened in Emmons Field while they wait for Egwene to go get Nynaeve. He tells Rand that Mat's alive and that they're going to pick up the pieces and build again, that the light will take care of them, and if it doesn't, they'll take care of themselves. That's the essence of Two Rivers people, folks. Light will take care of us, but if it doesn't, we'll still be okay. Then Master Luhan leaves Rand to wait for Nynaeve because he says he's got to go do some things, which obviously is going to involve picking up the pieces in the town. So Nynaeve arrives, looks over Tam, but she basically, in a big display of frustration, says that she can't do anything for him. Nynaeve knows what her medicines can do and also knows when it's too late to help someone. So Rand, of course, puts up a fight, but Nynaeve says that she has to help those she knows that she can help. So she's basically almost writing Tam off as a lost cause at this point. Rand's hope kind of crumbles, and it leaves him feeling kind of empty. So he goes and seeks out Bran Alvear, the mayor, because he thinks he'll know what to do, so he heads over to the Wine Spring Inn. Tom Marilyn is outside the inn, and he helps Rand carry Tam inside the inn. The mayor is surprised to see both of the Althors alive, and he helps Rand get Tam up to a bed. He speaks to Rand about everything that happened that night and how Moraine called a ball of lightning down from the sky, and Lan was a whirlwind with his sword, and that he was a weapon himself, seeming to be in 10 places at once while fighting the Trollocs. So this is kind of where we get clued in that Moraine is an Aes Sedai, because no one else can do that but an Aes Sedai. After a little prompting from Tom, the mayor suddenly realizes that there's a way to help Tam. The mayor tells Rand how Aes Sedai can heal, and though nobody ever wants to get involved with Aes Sedai, it's really the only chance that they have to help Tam. So Rand's willing to do anything, even deal with Aes Sedai to save Tam. So Rand goes and finds Moraine and Lan, who are searching the dead Trollocs. Both the Aes Sedai and the Warder discover Trollocs are working together in a way not seen since the Trolloc Wars. So this is extremely, of course, problematic. Moraine says she fears that they are further behind than ever. We don't know what she means by that exactly. Of course, expounding the mystery, we get one question answered, but are left with a lot more. Moraine murmurs that there's a little more light in the darkness when she sees Rand and asks him how his dreams are. Rand's not really concerned with his dreams at the time, and he tells her about his father, saying he'll pay any price to save Tam. Moraine's very tired from everything that's happened the night before, but she agrees to do what she can for Rand's father. So the main thing here that really sticks out to me, other than, of course, the chaos and everything, is the fact that there is a big theme of the Aes Sedai being mistrusted. Now, we find out for sure that Moraine is an Aes Sedai and that Lan is, in fact, her warder. It's the only explanation for what they were able to do. But if you kind of read through the chapter, you pick up on that the Two Rivers folk aren't really keen on letting the Aes Sedai help. They wouldn't let her help do anything. I mean,
there's a lot of mistrust.
A ton of mistrust. Apparently, someone, we don't know who exactly, or if we do know who, I forgot.
Likely a Coplin.
But someone draws the dragon's fang on the inn door because Moraine and Lan are staying at the Wine Spring Inn. And Tom himself didn't want to be the one to suggest asking Moraine for help. He was very hesitant to bring that up.
He kind of brought up things that would lead to it.
He kind of, in a roundabout way, paved a natural talk path to speaking about Moraine being able to help. But despite all of this, once suggested, both Rand and Bran are quick to accept Moraine's help and give little thought to tales of Aes Sedai being dark friends. So basically, they kind of push everything out of their mind that they've heard in approaching Moraine to ask for help. But it's interesting because it's not completely successful as far as those thoughts not being present. And the reason I say that is because I'm in the book right now. Well, go ahead.
When Rand sees her, goes to find her, he expects her in his head to look different. He's telling himself this whole time that she's not going to look any different now that I know she's an Aes Sedai. And then whenever he sees her, he's still surprised that she's just looks like a pretty woman sitting in the dirt. Mm-hmm. She's not any different. She's not a monster. She's not...
Right. It's not like she transformed at the revelation that she's an Aes Sedai, she still looks like the Moraine they met and
Yes.
sounds like the Moraine that they met, and he's still the Land that they met. So they both look and sound the same, even though they're a little worse for wear due to the confrontation. But the one thing I wanted to kind of hone in on, though, is when Rand gets over to Moraine, he is talking to her and kind of awkwardly asking for help. And when he goes to ask for help, he says, "I'll pay any price in my power if you help him, anything." And Moraine responds with, "Any price." Like she's thinking about it. She's like, "Huh, any price, huh?" And I just couldn't help but think, like, Moraine, that doesn't help your image saying that, because you've got to know what these folks say about Aes Sedai, or it's like, you never want to get tangled up with an Aes Sedai. They charge too high a price and things like that. But she doesn't name a price right then, but she definitely leaves it in Rand's mind that she's going to come back for something, because she says, "We'll speak of prices later, Rand, if at all. I can make no promises. Your wisdom knows what she's about. I'll do what I can, but it is beyond my power to stop the wheel from turning." So she doesn't come right out and say, "I am going to 100% heal Tam." She just promises that for any price, she will try to heal Tam. So,
I I don't think it's about a price with her here, because it does say if at all. Those words say, well, we might speak of prices. I might need you to do something for me, but it's not guaranteed that I'm going to need that at this
still in
moment.
all, I think it
Uh,
lends a little bit of legitimacy to some of the things that the townsfolk believe about the Aes Sedai in that moment, because it may not be as bad as they make it out to be. But if she wasn't willing to
uh,
consider a price of any kind, if for anything, I don't think she would have mused back toward Rand about that. She would have just said, "I'm not going to ask you for anything. I'll just go do it." But instead, she said, "Any price, huh? We may have to talk about that,
well,
but we need to see what we can do first." It's basically what she said.
I think it's I think it's more of a I think she's just, because he said the words, the exact words that he said was, "I'll pay any price in my power if you help him, anything," like, because he was adamant about
Mm-hmm.
it. So she just kind of mused about it, like, really, you'd give me anything. I think it's kind of, Moraine has this little tiny bit of mischievous to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what it was. That was what was there. It wasn't so much that she wanted anything specific from him at this point in
But I
time.
see. I have to wonder if how much on purpose she did that, because she has to know that this stuff is said by these people. Like, she's got to know. She's a traveled Aes Sedai. I mean, like, she's got to know that what these people say about her, especially since most of them won't trust her to help with the recovery in the town. I mean, she's got to know what these people say about her. So when Rand actually makes it a point to bring that out, it can almost be like a response. Like, she's latching onto that and saying, "Huh, any price?" Not saying like, "Oh, sweet, what can I get from this farm boy?" It's more like, um, it's more like he is showing his understanding of the Aes Sedai by even bringing a price up to begin with, I guess is what I'm trying to
Well,
say.
I think it's the point that he wants her to help, and that it's not just that he is willing to let her help; it's that he wants her to let him
Well,
help.
right, and
Or
it all comes from um, a drive to see his father healed, and that's definitely where it originates and where it comes from. But I guess the way he frames it and the way he's thinking about it, it's there's no back and forth, there's no barter. He just lays it all out in front of her, and then she says, "Okay, well, I'll see what I can do." And so the thing of the price, it's just like I said, it's kind of like the theme with their understanding of the Aes Sedai. And even so now, the last paragraph of the chapter, you know, he says, that he was committed now. He's committed to this. He's already told Aes Sedai he would do anything that she wanted him to, basically, any price, anything in his power to see his father, made whole. And so he was basically fully vested at this point. And his thoughts were kind of, running in his head about that as the chapter ends. Um, because he still has that, Two Rivers understanding of Aes Sedai, even if she hasn't done anything yet, and even though he's starting to see, well, she doesn't look like a, I guess for lack of a better word, a witch. She hasn't transformed into some, ungodly looking being. Now she's just the same small, elegant, albeit a little dirty Moraine that I met last night. And but then of course the severity of that moment, is kind of bundled with all this other stuff that's been happening. So this point in the book is everything is really like the thrust of the book, the point of the book is really building. This is the part of the book where I find most people are really. This is really the part in Eye of the World, or one of the parts in Eye of the World, where if you try to disturb someone while they're reading this, they shush you. They can't break from it.
I I would like to point out that Robert Jordan is very good at uh, pointing out things that you don't realize that you do during a traumatic moment. Like in this chapter, when Rand first sees Egwene, his thoughts, he thinks, he notices like everything about her for some reason, like the oddest details. Like
Mm-hmm.
he notices that her buttons are done up crookedly on her shirt and that for some reason her hands are clean, which I think it's pretty obvious once you think about it that the reason her hands are clean is because she was helping the wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was helping tend to the wounded, so she needed clean hands. But like those that those slight moments in his head really puts you in Rand's shoes.
Right, and that just adds to Jordan's genius in writing. These little details when you go back through and you read it again, or even reading it the first time, if you're a careful reader to begin with, you notice these things and you're like, oh, that's. But it really does. It's like you said, he really does have a good way of putting you in a crisis moment in someone's head, and like you said, the little things that they do notice. I mean, if you've ever been in some kind of high stress moment, you do notice things, and you probably don't even realize that you do, but you do notice things that you wouldn't normally pick up on. And I don't know if that's because it's the adrenaline, a keen awareness, what the case may be. But you're right. Jordan does a
And
fantastic job bringing that around.
I think in my case, like because I've had times where something bad's happening, like this is a story I tell all the time to people in real life. I was carrying one of my husband's nephews and I tripped on a sidewalk. And in my head, in the little space of the moment, as I was in the air holding him, I was thinking, I'm falling. And I was thinking, I went through this entire thought process of if I fall like this, I'm going to land on top of him and he's going to get very hurt. And it got in my brain that I needed to turn my body and toss him into the grass. Even though I still ended up getting injured, I was able to keep uh, our nephew from actually getting more than just a slight bump,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And it's weird how the mind works that way, you know. And I think that may even be part of why Rand picks up on those things, because he cares about Egwene. So when he sees Egwene, his mind is like analyzing her, like, is she okay? Is she hurt? What's wrong with her? And he just notices the things that are different, because in the process of
Yes,
him
exactly.
assessing her state of being, he finds all of that. So I think that's a very good point. I think that's about all I have for chapter 7. Do you have any final thoughts on it, Thorn?
I am good. I pointed out what I wanted to.
All right. Now. With that being said, guys, moving now into our Twitter of Time segment, which Thorn is going to do tonight. So, Thorn, what are we addressing? What are we looking at this week from the glorious world that is Twitter of Time? Who are we talking about? What are we talking about?
So I wanted to mention Zane Barber. He's at Zane Barber on Twitter. He's one of the hopefuls who wants to get a spot on the Wheel of Time TV show. He's an actor. Uh he did a monologue of Rand at the beginning of, I think it
It's the Great
is,
Hunt.
The Great Hunt, yes. Sorry, I forgot it. So the beginning of The Great Hunt, there's a monologue that Rand kind of does. Well, it's kind of a back and forth between him and Lan, but there's a monologue there, and it's a really excellent video. I think he does an excellent job of portraying Rand's emotions and what he's thinking, and I think that everybody should go watch it. It's actually pinned at the top of Zane's Twitter page.
Yeah, I would go check him out. He is definitely one of at least a couple of actors that are on and active in the Twitter of time that are expressing interest in being on the show, specifically for Zane and another actor, Reed. They are, I guess you could almost say, jockeying for, if that's a great expression.
They tease each
Yeah,
other.
they do.
I
It's
think it's a
great.
lot of
It's a
fun.
whole lot of fun.
They gas each other up. It's not negative. They gas each other up. They're like, well, I got to jump 30 feet on top of a box. That might be a ridiculous number. I'm just making it up. And then the other one will be like, well, I got 32. And they like gas each other up. It's like friendly competition, and it's a lot of fun.
Right. So, but that's the thing is, Zane's always putting stuff up, whether it be, I think this is, unless I missed something, which is very possible. I think this is the first time he's actually put up any actual acting in the capacity of Rand for that part on his Twitter since everything has gotten started. I watched it just before.
I think that the
Go ahead.
I think that mostly what he does as Rand is he does the videos with like the sword play and stuff.
He does a whole lot of that, but then he's done this. It's technically a monologue insofar as there's not another actor present, but it is Rand's half of a conversation with Lan concerning everything going on around the beginning of the Great Hunt. And so, again, to our listeners who have not finished Eye of the World, maybe don't listen to that just yet. But for everyone else, please go check out his Twitter. Check out that video. I watched it before we started recording tonight. Excellent video. I think he did a great job. And just really and truthfully, like I said, if you're not really active on Twitter, get active, man. I mean, today was Wheel of Time Dance Party. That's the best way to jump in is just jump in with a GIF of someone or something dancing.
I think that Sarah Nakamura also made a post asking if anybody would like to be added to her tagging. So if you would like to be tagged every week on Twitter or on Wheel of Time Dance Party, you should head over to that post if she's still doing it.
Several tweets tagging lots of people. So so am I. So we're included. But in any case, definitely check out Zane Barber. Definitely go watch that video for sure. And then, of course, check out our other fine folks that are part of the Twitter of Time. We can't shout out to all of them in one segment. That's why we're going to do a segment just about every episode, if not every episode. So with that being said, we're getting near to time here. We're at about 52 minutes right now. We're trying to come in a little under.
I got to cut something out.
Yeah, well, okay, so then cut that out too. But coming around toward the end here a little bit, we have started the tradition, of course, of rolling a 20-sided die to see which chapters we get. Thorn, you may have it in front of you because I don't currently. I may have to click around a little bit. What chapters are next?
The next two chapters are Chapter 8, A Place of Safety, and Chapter 9, Tellings of the Wheel. I know which one I want.
$5 says it's the same one I want. Okay, seeing as how I'm rolling, because Thorn left her dice in her car, and I am a good D&D player and keep all my dice on hand. I'm just kidding. It was in my back room. Thorn, high or low?
High.
Low. It was a 2. I'll take Tellings of the Wheel.
You're so mean.
I can't help it that we both want the same chapter, and I can't help it this is the third straight week where I've won. I'm sorry.
Why do you always win? Are your dice loaded?
They're really not. I literally I just rolled a 2. Now, see, you would have won there. That was a 13. and then that was a
Darn.
14. So 2 out of 3 times you'd have got it, but I got the 1 out of 3.
That is
So
my favorite chapter. You better just read that entire section. That I'm not going to say what it is right now because that'd be a spoiler, but you just better read it.
I'm
Just
gonna
read
do
it.
what I want because it's gonna be my chapter, and I'm gonna do what I want with my chapter.
You know you're going to do it.
You know I'm gonna do what I want. But so next week, chapters 8 and 9. Listen in, Thorn. How can they get a hold of us? Get in contact with us? Give us money? How can they do these things?
Okay, so if you want to give us money,
Please.
you can go to patreon.com/onepowerpod. I will have a link in our description. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook if you just want to see what we post about or chat with us or whatever at onepowerpod. It's both the same. You can also, if you want to make comments at us or yell at us or whatever, you can email us at onepowerpod@gmail.com.
I have to say, I don't think yelling at us will do anybody any good because both of us get real mad at people that yell at us. So maybe don't do that.
Well, they've been warned now.
Yeah, you've been warned. I might be a little more patient than Thorn because she's definitely a green. So, which I'm a ginger, so it didn't take that much to get me kind of angry. But she's always ready to fight. I'm a little slower to fight. But if you yell at both of us, then you don't want a green Aja, Aes Sedai, and a ginger mad at you at the same time. It's not. That's a recipe. That is a bona fide recipe for disaster. Like 100%. So, with that being said, that's it for us tonight, guys. So, again, just hit us up on the social medias, and we're just gonna wrap it up here tonight. So just remember that the wheel weaves as the wheel wills. And my name is Greg.
And I'm Thorn.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.